In our headlines on this Thursday, February 26th, here in South Korea, the Bank of Korea holds its interest rate steady at 2.5% yet again, while raising its economic growth forecast to 2% for this year. Meanwhile, North Korea closes its party congress with Kim Jong-un, reaffirming commitment to nuclear weapons while ruling out dialogue with South Korea. And U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says U.S. tariffs for some nations will rise to 15% or higher from the recently imposed 10%. We start with details of the central bank's decision to maintain its benchmark interest rate at 2.5% and of its upward revision, that is, projection of 2% with regard to Korea's economic growth for this year. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
The Bank of Korea has yet again frozen the benchmark interest rate at 2.5%. The decision came unanimously on Thursday after a monetary policy board meeting.
With inflation expected to remain stable near the target and growth projected to improve at a stronger than expected pace, risks to financial stability remain. The board, therefore, judged it appropriate to maintain the current base rate while assessing domestic and external policy conditions.
Entering 2025, the benchmark rate stood at 3.0%. Since May last year, the board hasn't changed the rates for 6 Monetary Policy Committee meetings. And looking at the first ever revealing of a 6-month projection by the board, the rate is not likely to be changed for the foreseeable future. With each of the 7 Monetary Policy Board members getting 3 votes, more than a third of the 21 projection votes stood at 2.50%. Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea raised the economic outlook, forecasting 2% growth this year, 0.2 percentage points higher than its November outlook of 1.8%.
Domestically, while construction investment remains sluggish, private consumption has continued its recovery, driven by improved economic sentiment and income conditions, such as wages. Exports sustained high growth led by IT sectors, including semiconductors and computers, despite the impact of tariffs.
In fact, the BOK explained that IT manufacturing itself contributed around 0.7% to the growth rate this year. Around half of that comes just from chip exports. On the other hand, there remain risks in the industry as well as the economy. In fact, the fast growth in AI and tech was one of the factors the governor picked as a reason behind the intensified economic polarization. While the industry grows, non-IT sectors, especially construction, are struggling at the moment. Plus, with the rise in the stock market and with most of the investment done by the wealthy and institutions, the wealth gap could widen further. As for inflation, the central bank also raised the forecast for this year to 2.2%, a 0.1 percentage point higher than last November's. The bank explained it was due to upward cost pressures on some items, including electronic devices, while the rate will be subject to change with the changes in oil prices, exchange rates, as well as the government's efforts to keep prices low. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul has pledged stern action against unfair trade practices involving essential consumer goods. At a special task force meeting on price management earlier on this Thursday, he vowed to increase on-site inspections. He also asserted that firms suspected of price fixing will face punitive measures, including fines, and that the government will seek to single out key items for special monitoring. That being said, with regard to items like sugar and flour, which were at the center of recent price-fixing allegations, he said the government will ensure price stability extends to products that use them as the main ingredient. The head of the U.S. Foreign Trade Agency says tariffs are slated to rise to 15% or higher for some countries. He, however, refrained from revealing the names of the nations. Our Yi Sun-sin has the latest.
The United States is signaling that tariff rates could soon rise beyond the newly imposed 10% global levy. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Wednesday that while a 10% tariff is currently in place, some countries could see that rate increase to 15% or higher. Speaking during an interview with Fox Business Network, Greer did not name specific trading partners, but said future rates would be in line with tariffs the administration has recently pursued. The comments come after President Donald Trump suffered a setback at the Supreme Court last week when justices struck down his sweeping so-called Liberation Day tariffs introduced last year. In response, Trump announced a new 10% global tariff. According to a notice from U.S. Customs, an additional 10% ad valorem duty, which is a tax levied based on the determined value of the item being taxed, has been imposed on imported goods from every country for 150 days starting Tuesday, unless specifically exempted. Trump has also publicly floated raising tariffs to 15%, citing Section 122 of the Trade Act. That provision allows a president to impose tariffs of up to 15% for up to 150 days to address trade imbalances. The administration says the measures are aimed at protecting U.S. economic interests, while trading partners are closely watching how far Washington is prepared to go. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund believes the U.S. Federal Reserve will cut its benchmark interest rate just once this year. Now, in its U.S. economic outlook released on Wednesday local time, the fund projected that the policy rate will ease to 3.25 and 3.50% by the year's end. The IMF also announced that the U.S. economic growth will stand at 2.4% this year, higher than last year's pace, but in line with its previous outlook. It also warned that the Trump administration's tariff and immigration policies will weigh down on the American economy. Meanwhile, over in San Francisco, Samsung has unveiled its new S26 lineup of smartphones as it seeks to set up an ecosystem based on AI that, quote, does the work for you. Our An Sung-jin has more.
Reach, openness, and confidence.
These are the three keywords Samsung Electronics seeks to push forward with its latest Galaxy S26 series. South Korea's tech giant unveiled its latest flagship smartphones at the Unpacked conference in San Francisco on Wednesday, local time. The Galaxy S26 series, including the Galaxy S26 Ultra, Galaxy S26 Plus, and Galaxy S26 emphasize an intuitive artificial intelligence experience that everyone can use.
That's why Galaxy AI is designed to be easy and always available, adapting to you seamlessly and effortlessly without a learning curve.
AI is integrated across the operating system, providing noticeable assistance to users' daily lives. A key feature that reflects this is the Now Nudge, which suggests actions based on context rather than waiting for explicit user commands. For example, the phone automatically checks for scheduling conflicts when receiving a message about a meeting, or displays a shortcut linked to a curated page of relevant needed images. Now Brief, a similar feature, organizes daily schedules by extracting not only calendar entries, but also unrecorded meetings from conversations. The Galaxy S26 series also features an integrated AI platform that not only supports its own AI voice assistant Bixby, but also allows users to set Google Gemini and Perplexity as default AI agents. The latest AI also strengthens privacy protection. The Ultra model showcases a privacy display feature, the first of its kind on a mobile device, allowing users to restrict screen visibility. The Ultra and Plus models also introduce AI-based image processing features. And to support these expanded AI capabilities, Samsung has worked on boosting its hardware performance. The Ultra model is powered by Qualcomm's latest Snapdragon 8 Elite 5th generation for its chipset improving CPU and GPU performance. It has also minimized performance drops caused by overheating. The Galaxy S26 series is set for release in more than 120 countries, starting with South Korea and the United States on March 11th. Pre-orders in South Korea will run from February 27th until March 5th. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
North Korea's 9th ruling party Congress came to a close on Wednesday with a military parade and remarks by Kim Jong-un that rule out prospects of engagement on the Korean peninsula. Our Cho Young-un files this report.
Pyongyang held a large-scale military parade on Wednesday night to mark the 9th Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea, but no major weapon systems appear to be on display. It is believed to be the first time in a decade that North Korea has not placed weapons or military equipment at the forefront of a key parade.
It can be seen as being in line with a possibility to unveil advanced weapons at future military parades. It may also reflect an intention to calibrate its actions so as not to provoke the U.S., particularly if the dialogue resumes between the U.S. and North Korea.
According to the North state-run Korean Central News Agency on Thursday, leader Kim Jong-un presented a report at the 9th Congress, reaffirming the regime's strategic line of bolstering its nuclear capabilities. He reasserted the permanent status of North Korea as a nuclear weapon state and his commitment to maintaining defense capabilities. He vowed to continuously produce nuclear weapons and develop strategic arms, including a seaborne intercontinental ballistic missile. He outlined a new 5-year plan for defense buildup, citing on-land and underwater-launched ICBMs, AI-equipped drones, surveillance satellites, and strategic and electric weapons. Regarding the United States, Kim said there would be no reason not to get along well if Washington recognizes North Korea's status as a nuclear-armed state. He added that the future of bilateral ties between the U.S. and North Korea depends entirely on the attitude of the U.S. At the same time, he described South Korea as the most hostile enemy, ruling out the possibility of dialogue and saying nothing remains in inter-Korean relations except cold calculation and a thorough response based on its own interests. In response, the Blue House reiterated its commitment to peaceful coexistence and shared prosperity on the Korean peninsula, urging both sides to refrain from hostile rhetoric and build mutual respect and trust. The Unification Ministry also expressed regret that Pyongyang reaffirmed its stance of hostile two-states relations and that it didn't respond to the South Korean government's effort to promote peaceful coexistence. Cho Young-un, Arirang News.
In other news, defense and foreign ministers of South Korea and Canada sat down in Ottawa on Wednesday local time. The meeting comes amid South Korea's bid for Canada's next-generation submarine program. Now, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun stressed that South Korea's potential participation in the Canadian patrol submarine project will greatly contribute to Canada's economy and invited his Canadian counterpart Anita Anand to visit Seoul. Defense Minister An Gyu-baek meanwhile told his counterpart David McQuinty that Korea's participation in the project would serve as a turning point for bilateral defense cooperation. The Canadian defense official responded by sharing hopes for greater partnership in space and maritime security. Anticipation is mounting as nuclear talks between Washington and Tehran are slated to resume over in Geneva this Thursday, even as the two sides remain engaged in a fierce war of words. Our Ian Jin reports.
Iran and the United States are due to meet Thursday in Geneva for their third round of talks. The talks will be mediated by Oman. Iran has insisted on 3 preconditions for reaching a deal with Washington: recognizing Iran's symbolic right to enrich uranium, allowing for Tehran to dilute its stockpile of highly enriched uranium, and not imposing controls on Iran's ballistic missile program, which have reportedly already been accepted by Trump's Middle East envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in the previous 2 rounds of talks. The envoys have asked that Iran agree to enrichment at below 5% purity, which was the level Iran had accepted in the previous 2015 nuclear deal and is well below weapons grade. The Trump administration is also reportedly demanding that any future nuclear agreement with Iran remain in force indefinitely. This refers to the sunset clause of the 2015 deal, under which nuclear restrictions were set to expire gradually between 8 and 25 years after the agreement was signed. Iran says its enrichment activity has stopped since U.S. airstrikes on their nuclear sites last June. International nuclear inspectors have not been to Iran since the airstrikes, but have analyzed that most of Iran's underground nuclear facilities remain intact despite their entrances being buried under rubble from the bombings. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, will be in attendance at the Geneva meeting on Thursday. Before departing for Geneva, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said a fair, balanced, and equitable deal was within reach, while reiterating that Iran was not seeking an atomic weapon and was not ready to give up its right to peaceful use of nuclear technology. Yi Sun-sin, Arirang News.
Back here in Korea, President Lee Jae-myung and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung were at a special exhibition on Admiral Yi Sun-sin at the National Museum of Korea on this Thursday. Now, Yi Sun-sin is one of Korea's most renowned war heroes, known for his victories against the Japanese Navy during the 16th century Joseon dynasty. The exhibition features more than 250 artifacts, including his handwritten war diary. The first couple also stopped by the museum's merchandise store, Muju, where annual sales surpassed 40 billion Korean won, or roughly $28 million for the first time last year. The first couple also spent time taking photos with other visitors there. Now, the Blue House says Thursday's visit sought to engage with the public and reaffirm South Korea's cultural heritage. Korea's southern port city of Busan is hosting Asia's largest drone show, and our business correspondent Kim Jun-hong was there.
The future of the skies is no longer science fiction, but an AI-driven reality reshaping both battlefields and industries. Asia's largest drone exhibition, DSK 2026, is underway in Busan, drawing participants from more than 20 countries. Defense remains the industry's most strategic domain, with the Ministry of National Defense unveiling AI-driven combat systems and autonomous operations. Developed by the ROK Army, this drone integrates AI algorithms trained on simulated combat scenarios to assess targets and simplify conventional command procedures.
The AI identifies the most suitable military unit and weapons for the target, and the information is sent directly, allowing for a much faster response.
Industry players are also integrating AI into new drone capabilities. This surveillance drone, supplied to the Marine Corps, can detect floating objects in inaccessible areas, suggesting uses beyond the battlefield.
For example, AI now powers agricultural machinery and even seed planting drones, making everyday tasks more efficient. Today, AI is at the center, with drones serving simply as the platform for its expanding applications.
Beyond the exhibition floor, global visitors are closely watching Korea's growing drone capabilities. What stands out to many is the industry's ability to deliver fully integrated solutions.
The Korean companies are very, very competitive. What I admire is the capability to build the final product and sell the final product with all the support, software and hardware. That's very inspiring.
Drones are expanding their role across multiple next-generation industries, and with AI now embedded in these systems, a new chapter is beginning. Kim Jun-hong, Arirang News, Busan.
South Korea is broadening its diplomatic frontier by building on its soft power to promote partnerships with countries traditionally considered out of its strategic range. Now, this is according to the new Deputy Minister for Public Diplomacy, who recently sat down with our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young. Do take a listen.
Inspiring hope, solidarity, and even a bit of dance, Korea plans to expand its reach to the global south. Korea's new Deputy Minister for Public Diplomacy, Im Sang-woo, brings decades of experience to the role of broadening Seoul's diplomacy beyond traditional statecraft centered on trade and security.
I think in this era of uncertainty with a lot of changes and vagaries, public diplomacy has really become one of the most important tools of diplomacy. It's become one of the most important diplomatic strategies that nations can adopt, especially for nations, middle powers like Korea. Global South is the focus.
His tenure as Korea's first ambassador to Madagascar offers a glimpse of his approach. Learning Malagasy on the ground, Im's engagement with communities went beyond the vernacular. He also drew in individuals and NGOs, helping strengthen healthcare networks, youth education and food security, as well as biodiversity protection and free elections. During COVID-19, he was putting up hospital wards and even delivering medicine. Im became a widely loved and respected figure, even invited to create his own TV show on Korean culture.
Madagascar is a very young country with, I think, over 60% of its population being under 25 years old. So a very young country with a lot of potential. And actually, Madagascar used to outperform Korea until 1967. They were richer than us. So I used to point out this historical context to tell them that, you know, Madagascar could actually one day become the next Korea, and Korea will be there in its journey, in its quest for development. And I try to convey this not in French, but in Malagasy, so that I could really, you know, reach out to their hearts.
Im's people-centered approach also resonated in India, his most recent post. He drew public attention not only by impressively speaking Hindi, he also volunteered every weekend as a certified guide at the National Museum.
And I say, you know, hi, I'm your tour guide for you today. Actually, I'm from Korea, and they're a little taken aback, but I sprinkle my tour guide with, you know, with Korean history, where Korean history overlaps with Indian history, and Buddhism too, and it came from India. So after my 1 hour and a half of guide through the National Museum, the Indians, they come to appreciate not only their own history, but also the fact that Korea and India were very close, interconnected, despite the distance.
Further expanding Korea's reach online, Im and his Korean embassy colleagues bust out dance moves to the song Natu Natu. This drew widespread reactions across the world's largest democracy, including from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who shared and commented on the post. Now overseeing Seoul's public diplomacy, Im hopes to build on the Korean narrative of development that resonates with emerging partners and younger societies.
As we went through all this in a very compressed timeline, you know, we experienced war, poverty, and then modernization, democratization. So all these things happened in such a short period of time, so we have such a huge reservoir of raw material to be used for our stories and our music. And I think people across different backgrounds, they see their story, they see their struggles in our storylines.
Now 3 decades into his career, Im hopes to continue reaching people's hearts to build shared aspiration and solidarity. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
Spring is gradually making its presence felt. Today, most regions saw temperatures 3 to 5 degrees above average, with afternoon highs hovering around 15 degrees Celsius. And it's going to stay that way through early March, meaning a big gap between daytime and nighttime temperatures. Meanwhile, rain starts on Jeju tonight before spreading to the rest of the southern provinces and the east of Gangwon-do province tomorrow. Most areas will see around 5 millimeters, but Jeju Island might get up to 20 millimeters. Moving on to the readings now. Temperatures begin slightly higher than today. Seoul starts off at 5 degrees, Daegu at 7 degrees under sunnier skies in central areas. Then highs will get up to 15 degrees in Seoul, but Daegu and Busan will only make it to 12 degrees Celsius tomorrow afternoon. But air quality will be normal to good nationwide. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.